Hello, everyone. And before I go any further, we've had some storms rolling through here right now, and the power did go out. It just blinked on and off about an hour ago. So if that happens, you're like, well, what just occurred here? You'll know. And I will have to make a decision one way or the other whether the show can continue. Of course, the power goes out for a while, then that's the way it goes. But if it like flickers off and the Wi-Fi has to reboot and everything, I'll have to make a decision at that time whether I can continue or not. So if think something goes up with your feed, that's probably what it is. Yes, this is Unfound Live for July 14th of 2025. I guess we are officially halfway through the summer, halfway between Memorial Day and Labor Day here in the middle of July. I hope everybody's having a fantastic summer. I have a spectacular, stupendous show planned for all of you tonight. As you can see, we're going to talk about a missing boy. He's still missing from some years ago. His story caught my eye on Facebook. Was it Saturday? Was it yesterday? And I want to talk about it. And this might have to start making this kind of a weekly thing on the live show. Maybe I'll just pick out some disappearance that's somewhat old that catches my eye and just offer some comments on it just from an analysis point of view. I don't do a lot of theorizing as far as, well, if somebody killed him, what does that mean? Just look at what, try to compare that particular disappearance to others that we've featured on Unfound. So I'm going to try to do that tonight. I have an Air India Flight 171 update. If you'll remember, I talked about this some weeks ago. This is the plane that was taking off. It was flying from India to London, and right after takeoff, it crashed. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's just a preliminary report. I think a lot of people understand that these investigations go for a long time. An official report usually doesn't come out to a year and a half later, something like that, no matter if it happens in India, the United States, or wherever else. But a preliminary report is out, and there is nothing good in it at all. All bad news. And although I don't think I actually came right out and said it a few weeks ago when I talked about this plane crash, I can now come right out and say it, but we'll get to that. In fact, it's probably going to be, once I get through, of course, all the intro stuff, that's probably going to be the first story I discuss. And then also, I need to do a follow-up. You'll remember, was it a month ago, maybe even longer than that ago, there was this story about all of these cars that were found in a lake, in a park. And, of course, the local news there was saying these could be connected to missing persons cases. We have a follow-up. I have a follow-up on that as well. And, of course, there are some other things that I want to discuss before we're done as well that hopefully I'll have time. Maybe I won't. We'll just have to see. As you are watching tonight, please give this video a thumbs up. Please tell your friends and family about this live show that happens here every Monday night. Maybe some of you have been around long enough when it was on Tuesday nights. And then for a very long time, it was on Wednesday nights. Remember that? I think some of you may be around long enough to remember that. And now it's been on Monday nights, for a couple years now? And I know that sometimes it gets in the way of your Monday Night Football and everything. But for me, for my workflow and everything else, I have to admit, it's nice to get this done at the beginning of the week. The old time, the previous iteration on Wednesday nights, it kind of felt like I was getting Friday's episode all together, and I had to stop and then devote time to this and then get back into it. Now, I don't have to do that. I haven't had to do that for a couple years. But once again, give this video a thumbs up. You can support Unfound a variety of ways at Patreon, PayPal, right there below the chat in the super chat button on most apps anyway. And then also you can hit the join button if you're watching on YouTube this evening. You can also watch on Facebook if you prefer that. But on YouTube, you can hit the join button and get some stuff that other people do not. Before I go any further, let's see who is in there. Nephew Charles, is Bratian seeing his grandmother yet? Is that happening? Charlie, is Bratian in Ohio yet? I'm wondering about that. Hello, D. Hello, Milo. What's going on? D, you did make it on time. Good. It's good to see you. Lisa, good evening, Ed. How are you doing tonight, Ed? My fingers are messed up from playing mandolin. Wow, look at you. I didn't know anybody played the mandolin anymore, Lisa. Hello, Mary Jane. Dia, let's do this. Yes, Dee had asked me earlier. I guess Dee was checking out the Weather Channel and seeing that storms were rolling through here. And it's weird that they came from the east. Most of the time we get weather here comes from off the Gulf. But this storm came in from like the northeast. And so I got some video of it coming in. And then maybe some of you saw that I posted maybe around 8:45 Eastern. I took some pictures of what the sky looked like, took a video as well. And man, it was really creepy out there. So thank you for worrying about me, D, but I can assure you that it would take quite a bit. Being that I've been through two hurricanes in this building, it would take quite a bit. In fact, I will go as far as to say I think a tornado could hit this building, and I think I'd just be fine. Yeah, Charlie, good evening to you. Fishing, what's going on? Good to see you, Amy. And I just got back from Oklahoma where I saw Steve Earle and Newkirk from Shawnee. Yes, Lisa, I saw the videos that you posted on your personal Facebook page. It took a little while for my ears to recover. Carrie says, am I late to class? The only person who isn't allowed to be late is me. Charlie goes right after his birthday. All right, so he is not in Ohio yet. And Marcus is reminding everybody to hit the button, subscribing. It's definitely worth it. Thank you, Marcus, for stating that. I really appreciate it. So what has gone on since we all got together a week ago? Well, there was a fiasco regarding my dishwasher. My dishwasher went bad. And the owner of this place decided to just get a new one instead of repairing the old one. It was like repairing it was going to cost $250. And a new dishwasher, I guess, is like $350. So they were like, I'm just going to get a new dishwasher. Well, what happened was they came and delivered the new one, but the driver's like, oh, no, we don't install. There were two guys, and they were like, oh, we just bring it. We don't install it. This is Home Depot, by the way. And so I had to tell the rental person, who then told the owner that, yeah, they brought it over, but now I have two dishwashers. One that's installed that doesn't work, and one that works that's not installed. Go figure. And so there was that fiasco. It was like Keystone Cops. But finally today, so I was here dishwasher not working, new dishwasher in its box over in the guest bedroom, which is where I used to do this live show going way, way, way. Remember the room with the yellow walls? Yeah, over there. That's where it sat since last Tuesday. And then finally today, they called, hey, we're coming over. Like, no warning, nothing. Just, hey, we're coming over. Home Depot, again, is coming over. We'll put it in for you. So 2 guys showed up, and they completed it in like a half hour. And so they took the old one away, put the new one in. And so I now have a brand new dishwasher. Of course, the worrying thing is it's the same model that they just took away. So I guess if I'm in here long enough, I guess 2 more years, we'll see if this one lasts a lot longer than the previous one. Like I think I've told you, the one they just took away didn't even last 2 years. And I got to be honest, I didn't use it that much. You know, I'm just here by myself. It's not like I'm running a restaurant or something. So, the thing is, I think mechanically it was okay, but there was some sensor in it that was telling the computer that it was still full of water when it wasn't. So the sensor went bad, and to fix it, like I said, $250, I guess. So the owner just said, I'll just get a new one. And then that's what brought up the bring a new one, and it sat there staring at me for 6 days before it could get installed. Hey, low Ronald, what's going on? Good to see Ronald. You didn't take the 90-degree stuff back with you from PA. Sorry about that, Ronald. Forgot to pack it. Sorry. Marcus, so they did it. They did install it. Yes, they did eventually, Marcus, but it's that other dishwasher sat in that other room for 6 days. Yeah. Dee, hello. Happy Monday. Happy Monday to you, Dee. Happy Monday to you. Lisa says, LOL, Ed. Yeah. Yeah, that music, Lisa, a little much. You know, you should put a warning stamp on that. Maybe some of you, you know, back in the day when Tipper Gore and all those, I don't know what we want to call them, but all those people back in the 1980s were going after heavy metal music and all that. Lisa, your music is what they should have been going after. So that was my dishwasher story. And then I have a story from going over to Orlando. I'm going to be playing in a tournament, disc golf tournament during Labor Day weekend. Fairly excited about it. I've already signed up, and I've already reserved where I'm going to be staying over there. And so on Thursday, I planned to go over there, and I stayed overnight in an Airbnb to check out the courses. Because usually when I go over to Orlando, it's, you know, and I've played this courses many times, but I've really never just walked them. Just took a look at them. It's easy to get caught up in the playing of them and not so, you know, and, you know, should there be some sort of strategy here? And so I said, this is what I'm going to do this time. This is what I'm going to do. Got it all planned out. Went up, saw my dad for 2 weeks. I'm back. I just got the podcast to do and other things to do. Don't have to go anywhere. So I'm just going to go and do that. So I went over there. It was fine. Went over to Turkey Lake and checked out. There's 2 courses there, but I'm going to be playing only one of them. And it's the course is the second one they ever put in there. And they call it, because of that, it's Turkey Lake. So it's T, and they call it T2, just like Terminator 2, but it's T2. That's what they call the course. And so I walked it through some discs, but really just kind of walked it and checking things out, even though I've played this course many, many times, but I've really never just walked it, kind of enjoyed it. You know what I mean? And I also took some pictures off of each tee, But then, it's in a very nice place. You have to pay to get into this park. So you really don't have to worry about anything in there. It has a really nice RV park in there, and both courses surround this RV park. It's nice. It's really nice. Turkey Lake, you can look it up, Google it, do satellite view, whatever. But the other two courses that I'm going to be playing are at a place called Barnett. Now, what's funny about this is that 10 years ago, I won a tournament in Orlando at Barnett Park. But the funny thing is, one of the courses, they've redesigned it since then. So they have two courses called the North Side and the Park Side. The Park Side only has about, I don't know, 5 baskets, maybe 4 or 5 baskets that are from the original design. The rest of it has totally been redesigned. They dug up, put a canal in, a trench in, better water drainage and all of that stuff. Somewhere around, I'm going to say 2018, something like that. Somewhere in there. So just a few years after I won a tournament over there at that course. Well, the Barnett Park courses are just public parks by the county that Orlando is in. It's not a city park, it's a county park. And it has a reputation for being a little rough. It's not in the greatest part of town. And you get a lot of, people hanging out there, maybe doing things that aren't legal and stuff like that. Now, for the tournament, it'll be fine. It's no big deal for tournament time. But if you show up there like I did, and I should have known this going in at like noon on a Thursday, 12:30 on a Thursday, 1 p.m. on a Thursday, and it's a nice day. Well, as I tell all of you, you got to keep your head on a swivel. And you can see stories if you Google them about there have been shootings in that park and all sorts of stuff. And that's very common. I mean, you have to remember that most disc golf courses are in public parks, and things go on in public parks. In contrast to like Turkey Lake, which is a park, but like I said, is it a state park? I don't think it's a state park, but you have to pay to get into it. It's only $2, but that's enough. And the other thing is, and it's like in a really nice part of Orlando. Barnett Park is not. And if you can believe it, I started going around on the Parkside course, and some guy started following me. True story. Not obviously following me, but I noticed him when I pulled in. He was, you could tell he's like talking to himself and, that type of thing. And he was just kind of milling around there like near the parking lot. But as soon as I started walking off, he started walking that way too. But then I went one direction. He kind of went the other direction. But I've been to this course. Like I said, I won a tournament there 10 years ago. I know this park really, really well. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go down here and I'm going to have to curl around and come back. And I got to keep my head on a swivel, because the thing about the park is, because of the woods and everything, there are places where you are totally out of sight of everybody else. You can't see the parking lot. You can't see, like, there's a main building there. There's like a playground there and basketball courts and everything in this. But if you're in certain parts of the course, you can't see anything. You're like out there by yourself. And of course I was by there. So if you're with other people, but wouldn't you know that I went 4, 5, 6, 7. I got to basket number 8 on the park side, which is on the back side. There's woods. It's right on the edge of the park. There's a questionable neighborhood right on the other side of the fence, and I'm by myself. And I start walking down 8's fairway, which is probably about 400 feet long. And that guy pops out of the woods about 100 feet in front of me. Now, the last time I saw him, he was going in the opposite direction, and then he popped out in front of those. Luckily, I was prepared. And if you're wondering, yes, we'll just leave it. I was prepared, but I didn't want to confront the guy. He looked at me. I made a complete 90-degree turn and got the hell out of there. Happened. He popped out of there, and I think because it easily could have been that I could have been walking up that fairway, and he could have popped out right beside me. And who knows what his intentions were. And it didn't look like he had any weapons on him or anything, but still. But I think what saved me is that I had my phone with me, and I was playing music. I forget what I might have been listening to something. Might have been Julia Colley's podcast, The Consult, or something. Might have been music. Can't remember. But I had it up very loud, and I think he heard my phone from that far away, and he wondered who was coming, and that's why he popped out. If I had not had that, I was like silent. It's very possible I would have gone up there, and he would have been right there, and who knows? I would have been kind of cornered. True story. So I made an absolute 90-degree turn, went kind of back not totally back down the fairway, but there is a little opening there. I didn't say anything to him, nothing. Out of there, hustling, jogging a little bit, got back to my car, and I said, that's it. I wasn't nervous. My heart wasn't racing or anything else, because I did have my pepper spray with me, and I was armed out in the course. And yes, that is legal. But who wants to get into that? Nobody. You do your best to avoid conflict, even as a person. Whether if you're in a state where you're allowed to be armed and all that, you do your best to avoid a conflict. And that's what I did. I hustled it out of there, and it was, and it's not like my car was right there. I mean, I had to go. I would say my car was 1/8 of a mile away, at least. And I had to go cut across a couple fairways and out into this grass and across the street, and all the while looking behind me, wondering if this guy, never did see him again. And in fact, I got in my car, I parked in a different section of the park, and just kind of scoped things out. Never did see him again. He never did come back to like where I originally saw him when I pulled in. So I don't know where he went. But I've seen disc golfer stories of being there and being approached and all of that stuff. And that should have been on my mind. I don't know I was there by myself. I don't know what I could have done about it. Luckily, I ended up doing most of what I wanted to do. But it's one of those things. You think I'm just joking around when I finish this show every week, telling all of you, keep your heads on swivels. This is what I mean. Be aware of your surroundings. When you pull into somewhere, whether it's a park or a grocery store parking lot, or even your apartment complex, what's going on? And the thing is, as soon as I pulled in and parked, I noticed that guy, and I said, that guy looks like trouble. Like I said, he was kind of roaming around, talking to himself, kind of looking up at the sky, doing those kinds of things. And seemed to be, I kind of watched him. I might have sat in my car for 10 minutes. He just was people were kind of ignoring him. There weren't that many people there. They were kind of ignoring him. He's kind of milling around, just aimlessly walking around. And as soon as I got him out of my car and started going through that course, that's when he left. And I said, that is not a coincidence. And I was right. He was waiting for me because, like I said, the last time I saw him, he was going the opposite direction. But here I was, and there he was. He knew where I was. He was now what his plans were, I don't know, but I didn't want to find out. So this is what I mean. Otherwise, it was a really nice trip to Orlando. Had a really nice little Airbnb that was person turned, the part of their house. You had your own outside door to go in there, and it was nice. And I stopped at a Publix to get food and slept well, and it was cheap and it was clean. The air conditioning was great, the Wi-Fi was fast, and everything else. Overall, the trip was really good, driving up, driving back. But for those it wasn't even 10 minutes, but for 5 minutes, no fun. No fun at all. So there's that. Let's see what everybody is saying here. Yeah, so yeah. Cabians, what's going on? DDR. So nobody's making any comments on that. But yeah, this is it was something. But what else has gone on? My trivia team last Wednesday, not the greatest. We got points, but we're not in first place anymore. And that's fine. It's only week 2, and we're playing till the end of September, so we got a lot of time. But we did as best we could. We didn't know the final question, but we didn't bet anything on it. And what were we going into the final question? We weren't in first place. Were we in third place or something? I don't even know what place we ended up being in, but overall we're in second place now, which is no big deal. But it's a nice, maybe I've told you, it's old team mixed in with new people. And these new people used to be our main rivals back a year and a half ago when we used to play in another place. And since we've lost people, I invited the team. I found them online. Or no, I saw them in person first. And I invited them to come join us to play together on Wednesday. So they've been coming to do it. I think it's working out. It's so great to have some new people involved. And we're playing really well. And they're really good people and funny and smart. And so I think it's going really well. And I think all my other old teammates are enjoying it as well. But we've lost so many people over the past year between my brother and his wife. And then one of the guys' sons moved to the other side of Tampa. So his name's Kevin. He can't show up anymore. Carla moved to Jacksonville. Deborah moved to Vermont. We've lost quite a few people over the last couple years. And, there've been weeks when it's only been 2 or 3 of us that can make it. It's I think we need some new people, to come join and be teammates, not just join our team. It's just come in, be part of the team, be part of it. We want you to join. We want to have success together. And so I think it's working out really well so far. And, but they're smart and they're friendly and they're funny and everything. That's as much as you can hope for. So I think it's working out well. D says, this is crazy, Derek. You have to be careful in public parks. I hike a lot. Occasionally I encounter uncanny individuals on the trails. Yeah, Derek, you got to watch. You gotta watch. And this was especially disconcerting because I know that was not a coincidence. If I just had not seen him before and I'm going down that fairway and he pops out, then that's something. Oh, it's just a weird coincidence. But that guy was stalking me. And I'll tell you, having been, an adult for quite a while, I'm not the kind of person who usually gets stalked. So, that was unique. Like I said, I wasn't scared or anything else, but I had already decided, knowing that guy, what he was doing. I said, well, maybe I'm just I could be hallucinating, but I'm just going to be very wary. And so when I saw him, it justified, it was already part of my thinking anyway. And so I didn't freak out or anything. I just went the other opposite direction. Now, I'm guessing that people who go to that course, the park or the course all the time, know exactly who that guy is. I do not. Hello, Diana. What's going on? Good to see you. Ronald Sturgeon Mom said you have had as rain as well. Yes. Right. Good to see you, Diana. So those are some of the things that went on with me over the past week. My dad's doing good. I could tell a story, but I'm not going to get into that tonight about me and him, but I'm not going to get into that. Dad's doing good. Talked to him today. I think he went and played cards this evening with all his friends up there where he lives, and that always makes me happy, him getting out and doing stuff. They're going to be having their own trivia night in his complex up there on Saturday. I think he's going to be going to that. And tell you what, my dad, pretty good at trivia too. He is pretty good. So let's get into what I want to talk about tonight. Like I said, I'm going to start with Flight 370. You should, by the way, Flight 370, Jeff Wise has a new episode out on his YouTube channel that you should probably check out. And it has more to do with, of course, these pieces of a jet, maybe Flight 370 that have washed ashore. They're getting more and more information about the barnacles and things that have grew on those pieces before they were discovered on shore. And more, it's showing that those parts were not in the water as long as had been, as long as the plane had been missing. So at the time, some of these parts ended up washing ashore like a year after Flight 370 went missing. The problem is, according to the growth, the ocean, little like mollusks and whatever else that grew on those parts in the time, it shows that those parts were only in the water for a few months. How about that? And they continue to get more and more information on that. But don't just take it from me. Go to, on YouTube, go to Jeff Wise channel. Just do a search for Jeff Wise. And that is the newest episode. It came out. When did it come out? He usually releases on Thursdays, but I think this one maybe came out on Saturday or something. It was very recent, within the past week. I know maybe Flight 370 for many of you is not your thing. You're more in just what we might call regular disappearances. But for anybody who has gotten caught up in Flight 370 and watched the series on Netflix, and you got to be following what Jeff is saying on his YouTube channel. Go over there, subscribe, and like his videos, please. All right, well, let's talk about Flight 171, this Air India flight. It was the first crash of a Boeing 787. This is Boeing's newest commercial jet that came out maybe 15 years ago, something like that, maybe around 2010, or maybe even a little longer than that. But certainly did not start in the 1990s. Somewhere after the year 2000, and here in the 21st century is when the Boeing 787 came out. At least at the time, the most advanced jet. It's not, of course, as big as a 747 or anything, but it's very efficient, can fly for a long range, can carry quite a few people. Like I said, not as many as a 747. But very efficient, very popular jet. Well, this Air India flight is the first crash in which one of these Boeing 787s got destroyed. And very sadly, everybody on the jet got killed except one person. I think there were over 200 people on the jet. One guy survived, and somehow he was able to walk away from it. Everybody else got killed. It's so weird. It's like, you think of that movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis and that kind of thing. And then there were people that got killed on the ground too. But to remind all of you, here's what, hello, Stephanie, rotten day at work. I'm sorry to hear that, Stephanie, had a rotten day at work. That sucks, especially on a Monday. But to remind all of you, there is video of the crash on YouTube if you want to watch it. But be very careful if you're very sensitive to such things. Maybe you want to avoid it. But Flight 370 or Flight 171 was taking off there in India. Looked like everything was fine, took off, got up to about 600 feet off the ground, and then just leveled off and then started coming back down. It didn't turn. It didn't twist. It didn't like really go straight nose into the ground. It was kind of almost looked like it was landing. That the way it was, the wings flat and just gently coming back down, and it crashed into a business area, residential area where there were many people on the ground, and very sadly, many people got killed on the ground as well. And if you remember when I talked about this some weeks ago, I said that this is a fairly unusual type of disappearance under those circumstances. Do planes crash on takeoff? Yes. Do have commercial planes, jets, whatever you want, American Airlines, United Airlines, Lufthansa, whatever. Are there a lot of stories about planes crashing on takeoff? Yes. Very famously, there was Flight 191, an American Airlines jet that lost an engine. It actually fell off the plane in 1979 and from Chicago, and it crashed on takeoff. I think back a couple weeks ago when this first happened, I talked about the Air Florida flight that happened in Washington, D.C. What was that, 1981, where there were ice on the wing and the plane tried to take off. If you get ice on the wings, you can't generate lift. And the plane took off, didn't have enough lift, crashed on that bridge. Very famous video of people being rescued from the river, that helicopter going out there. Maybe some of you've seen it. And then in the next, was it State of the Union address? I forget, but Ronald Reagan actually invited one of these guys who rescued these people, invited that guy, Skutnik, I think was his last name, to attend. So there are many stories of commercial jets crashing on takeoff. What's weird about this one is that, of course, it wasn't icing conditions. It was India in the summer. In addition to that, like, of course, with that American Airlines flight, it lost an engine. There was no signs that anything fell off this plane or anything else. It didn't lose a wing. Nothing fell off. Didn't lose its tail like that other American Airlines flight did right after September 11th. It just kind of rose up and then just went right back down to the ground. And I said at the time, it just looks like it lost lift. And what I mean by lift is that the air going past the wings for some reason wasn't enough to keep it in the air. And that can happen for a variety of reasons. For one, it just loses jet power. It's not moving fast enough to generate enough lift to push or pull it or suck it into the sky, I guess you could say. Or were the wings not configured for takeoff? And this has also been a very common type of accident where pilots get caught up doing other things. And, if you've ever been on an airline, a flight, and you look at the wings, if you're sitting by the wings, you can look out the window and see them. You know how they configure them a certain way for takeoff. And then when they get in the air, the wings get, we might just generically say, smaller. There are things, flaps and everything, that come out, make the wings bigger to generate more lift, but they then get smaller because that means then at cruising altitude, it's more efficient. But you try to take off in a commercial jet with the wings like small, like they would be at 35,000 feet, the jet's not going to get very far off the ground. That's the way it works. And there have been many crashes like that. And so the idea was, well, is that what happened? They didn't configure the wings right, and it kind of lifted in the air, but didn't have enough lift and then crashed. Of course, the problem with that is every commercial jet, for the last 50 years has had warnings. The wings aren't configured correctly. There'll be a bell, or even these days, the jet will be talking to you. So that seemed fairly unlikely. Well, they've released a preliminary report on this. And I have to admit, this isn't hindsight 2020, and I'm not trying to show you necessarily how smart I am on these things. But like I said, I know how rare this is. And as I've demonstrated many, many, many times just here in the last 10 minutes, my knowledge of plane crashes right off the top of my head. And I would admit, although I don't think I came right out and said it a few weeks ago, that this could be a situation where the engines just got turned off. It couldn't be like contamination of the fuel, or all the planes taking off from that airport would have been crashing, but only one did. And I thought, well, maybe it's birds, but there was no call from the pilots that, hey, we hit birds like we had with Sully and the Miracle on the Hudson. And seeing the video, you'd be able to see the birds hit the jet, go into the engines and destroy them. And that would happen. That's not on video. So things start getting narrowed down very, very quickly if you know what to look for. In addition, as I brought up a couple weeks ago, there was this little propeller that pops out from the bottom of the plane called the ram air turbine, that when power is lost on the plane, this little propeller pops out and it generates electrical power, like the most basic of electrical power that the pilots can then use to maybe land the plane. Of course, when you're thinking that happen, you don't think it's going to happen at 600 feet. If this happens at 15,000 feet and you lose both engines or something, well, you're up there 15,000 feet. You can maybe glide it somewhere. Maybe there's an airport in the area. You can figure it out. At 600 feet, that's not going to work. Maybe if there had been a river right in front of them, they could have done something. Even with Sully, the Miracle on the Hudson flight from many years ago, they got up to several thousand feet. And that's how they could figure out what they were going to do. And one of the best choices go into the river. Luckily, there was one there. If that happens in Las Vegas, where there are no rivers, maybe they can make it to Lake Mead or something. Maybe not. But, they got into several thousand feet. This plane only got to 600 feet. And so I started thinking, this is starting to look to me like these engines were shut off manually. This was not some sort of mechanical error. This was not something having to do with birds or with the wings or anything else. This looked to me like something where the engines got shut off. And guess what? I was right. We now know from the preliminary report and the preliminary the detailing of the cockpit voice recorder, although they've not released a transcript of it. But one of the pilots says to the other pilot, "Why did you shut the engines off?" And the other pilot in the cockpit says, "I didn't shut the engines off." But they know from looking at the data that one of those two guys shut the engines off. No different than if you're going down the road and you turn the key off on your car. Same thing. Now, you can imagine that it's easy to shut engines off on a plane, but it's hard to do it by accident. For example, since most of us, if not all of us, are drivers here, all of us being adults and have driven for many years, we might accidentally turn our windshield wipers on. We're doing something, we move our hand, you hit the windshield wiper, and they go across, and it's like, there's not even a cloud within 100 miles of you, but you've just hit the windshield wipers and they wipe back and forth, and you're like, oh, that's a mistake. That happens. We've all done that. We've also maybe been cruising down the road and did something and hit the turn signal by mistake or something. These things happen. You're trying to get comfortable. Who knows what you're doing in the car? But what we also know is none of us has ever been going at 70 miles an hour and accidentally turned our engine off. That takes some doing. You can do it. It's not hard to do. But to do it, you really, really have to do it. It's not something that's going to happen by accident. It's an expressed action that you're going to have to take. It's the same thing as you would imagine with aircraft engines. They're easy to turn off, but you don't do it by accident. And the way I would explain it to you is that the two fuel cutoff switches kind of look like light switches, the little, typical light switches that you have. And, the little skinny ones, I know that there's little different designs of them over there, but the traditional skinny ones like I have in this condo here, to flick lights, that's what they look like, kind of like that. But the big difference is it's easy to flip them on. So imagine if you go to flip a light on, usually pushing it up to turn the light on, you flip that switch up. But if you were to turn that light off, the way these switches are designed, you actually have to pull it out and put it back down. Why? Of course, they don't want somebody to just run their hands by that by accident and flip them back off like you could do a light switch. With these things, you kind of have to pull them out a little bit, not like an inch or something, maybe quarter an inch. You actually have to pull them out and put them back down to shut the engines off. Whereas if you're turning them on, you can just flip them right up. So of course, it's a safety thing. Well, somebody pulled both of those switches, and you can't do that by accident once again, because you actually have to pull them out. What also came out in the report is that both of them were not shut off at the same time. One was shut off, and then a second later, the other one was shut off, which would lead us to believe this could not have been some weird, really, really weird accident where somebody somehow, maybe the safety mechanism wasn't working, and one of the pilots just happened to hit them. And because in that case, both engines would shut off at the same time. They didn't shut off at the same time. There was a 1 second difference. The left one was shut off first, and then a second later, the right engine was shut off. Somebody shut them off on purpose. Now, before you start going to, was this a pilot suicide? I'm going to get into that. You have to remember, this isn't that, I know that it's rare, but it's not unusual. And in fact, just within the last couple of years, here in the United States, there was this Air Horizon, which is a part of Alaskan Airlines. Maybe some of you remember this. There was a flight taking place on the West Coast, and there were two pilots, and there was a guy from the same company who was what they call in the jump seat. He was getting a ride somewhere, and he lost his mind and tried to shut the engines off in mid-flight. And on that particular jet, I think the shutoff's like above, like on the ceiling of the cockpit, whereas like on the Boeing 8787 that I'm talking about here, It's like right there where your gear shift might be in your car if you have a console in the middle, like down there. Whereas this other jet, it was like up on the ceiling. This guy tried to shut both engines off. And of course, luckily, the pilot stopped them. And they ended up taking him back into the passenger compartment, and they kept an eye on him. And of course, police were waiting for him. And he was charged with a bunch of attempted murders. And what he said was that he was having some sort of, he'd been depressed. He admitted taking mushrooms a couple days before that flight. And he said when sitting there in the cockpit, he had a sudden urge that something bad was going to happen and he needed to turn the engines off. And that's why he did it. He was not suicidal. He was not homicidal. But he certainly tried to turn those engines off on purpose. And he also said that he felt like he was in a dream, and he thought that the only way to get himself out of the dream was to shut the engines off on the jet. So this just happened within the last couple years. There's also a crash that I know well because it happened just 3 hours south of me, where there was a private jet coming in for a landing in Naples. So a little private jet, not a commercial jet, private jet that maybe only holds 8 or 10 people. And it was flying from Ohio down to Naples. And on final approach, so it was like within seconds of landing, although that total report is not out yet, it seems that one of the pilots shut the engines off on that jet too. And then there's a very well-known, you can find it on YouTube, of this jet attempting to land on the highway. So there's dash cam, and all of a sudden you see this jet coming over the side, and it tries to land on the highway. The passengers lived. Both pilots got killed. The final report's not out yet, but the belief is that one of the pilots shut the engines off by accident, and I don't know where those controls are in that particular jet. So getting back to Flight 171, this seems to be a thing, at least recently. We start going back, we have to look in the archives of plane crashes to see how common this is. But what I'm saying here is that this doesn't necessarily mean that this was a pilot suicide. This does not mean that. Could be. Maybe the odds are stacked in the favor of that. But be clear, the Air Horizon, that was not a suicide. Yes, it would have, I don't know if he had shut off the engines, whether they would have crashed. Probably not, because they were still at a high altitude. They could have restarted the engines probably successfully. Nobody would have gotten killed. So I'm not sure. But to be clear, this is not a situation where that guy was trying to kill himself or kill others. He just had a sudden belief that he was in a dream and wanted out of it. And everybody seems to believe that. And, of course, he's going to be in jail for a long time. Are there pilot suicides? Yes. German Wings, Egypt Air, Silk Air. There's a Silk Air crash. Yes. Do commercial pilots commit suicide with their passengers on board? Yes, it's happened. I don't know what you would determine to be a lot, but it has happened. It's certainly something that is statistically significant, I'd say. But yeah, this Air India flight 171, one of those pilots shut those engines off. And they did it. Now, if that had happened at 30,000 feet, as long as the pilot who shut the engines off doesn't put up a fight or anything, everything would have been fine. The engines can be restarted, but you can't restart the engines at 600 feet. You're just going to fall out of the air too fast. You're going to have at least several thousand feet to be able to recover from that. to be able to survive. And so when engines get shut off at 600 feet, there's really, unless there happens to be a highway or a body of water right in front of you, because you don't have any time to make any turns, unless it's right in the path of the plane, you're crashing. You're crashing. That's just, and so that's what makes a lot of people think, was this on purpose? Did somebody, did one of the pilots do it on purpose? Now you may be asking, well, which one of the pilots might have done this? I'm inclined to think it was both men, the guy sitting in the left-hand seat, which would be the pilot seat. The pilot sits on the left, the co-pilot's on the right. It was the co-pilot who was actually taking off. He was moving the yoke, and the more experienced pilot on the left side is what they call the pilot monitoring, meaning the pilot, the co-pilot in the right seat actually has his hand on the yoke, pulling back, going to the air, whereas the pilot on the left is watching all the instruments, of course, doing the communication with air traffic control, etc. And my thinking is that if the pilot flying, the guy in the right seat actually went over and flipped those engines off, the pilot monitoring would have seen it immediately. That's what he's supposed to be doing. Whereas if it was the pilot monitoring, the guy in the left seat, he could get away with flipping them off because the pilot flying would be, of course, concentrating on getting the jet up into the air. And I'm also inclined to believe, now you have to keep in mind something as well, that there was a period of time they did try to restart the engines. There was 8 seconds between the engines being shut off and them trying to be turned back on. Well, 8 seconds, of course, is a long time. You would think that if somebody shut those engines off, they would immediately realize what they did and flip them right back on. That didn't happen. That did not happen. And of course, there was this question, why did you shut the engines off? I actually believe there was some gaslighting going on there. I think the pilot who asked that question, and they haven't said who said what yet. I'm pretty sure that the pilot who asked the question is the guy who did it, which then obviously would make this into some sort of on-purpose suicide scenario. Because that's gaslighting. He knows what he did, and he's asking the other pilot, why did you do it? Whereas, and like I said, 8 seconds. The 8 seconds is a big deal to me. It really, really is a big deal. And I think that it really reveals what was going on. Obviously, one of the pilots did not realize what the other one did. Did not. And I'm inclined to think, being that engine 1 got shut off first, it's on the left side. So for the pilot monitoring, that would be the switch closest to him. And so it would make sense that he would do that one first and then go to the other one and shut it off. They've not revealed any psychological profiles, and all that stuff. Was one of them having money problems, relationship problems? Had one of them expressed suicidal ideations? And all? None of that stuff has been released. Obviously, they're looking into it. I don't know how soon that's going, to happen. That we're going to find out about that. But the way I look at it, as all of you know, I am not a pilot, but I've read and watched videos about so many plane crashes. Going back 1970s, 1960s, 1950s. That, just like disappearances, you get a feel for these things after a while. And I realize the NTSB and whoever else is going to be investigating Air India Flight 170, They have a good job to do, and they have to go about it scientifically and everything else. For the most part, these crashes, it becomes very evident very quickly what happened. Are there exceptions? Sure, like when they had the Boeing 737 problems back in the 1990s, where Boeing 737s, when they were coming into land, the rudder was going over to one side and twisting jets right into the ground. And it took a while before they figured out why that was happening. It took a while. And one of those crashes I can remember was 1994. I still lived in Pennsylvania. It happened in the Pittsburgh area. Everybody got killed. A U.S. Air Flight 427. It was like 30 seconds from landing or something. It was like only 2,000 feet in the air, and the rudder just uncommanded went right to one side. They couldn't pull it back. And when that happens, the plane will just flip over. Boom. Very sad. Crashed in Aliquippa. But this obviously is not that. They know that the engines got shut off. I don't know if they'll ever be able to scientifically prove who shut those engines off, but, at least according to the data. But my guess is once they start, and they've surely already started doing this, they look into these pilots' backgrounds, they're going to know real quick which one of these guys did it. And my guess is that it was the pilot in the left seat, which would be called the main pilot, and the pilot with more experience. Why? I don't know. Once again, it could have been something, just like I said with the Air Horizon, where he was having some sort of hallucination or something. Could be. Doubtful. Could be. Conceivable. Certainly conceivable. Possible. But I would not say probable. It was one of those two guys. My guess is on the pilot monitoring. Now you may be thinking, well, was there anybody else in the cockpit? They haven't said anything about that. Boeing 787s only need 2 pilots, but as with the Air Horizon, it was the guy in the jump seat that wasn't doing anything, just getting a ride somewhere, that almost caused that crash. Could it be that there was somebody in the jump seat on the 787? The cockpit certainly does have an additional seat for one more person, but they've not said anything about that. So could somebody have just been sitting back there and done that without either pilot realizing it? They haven't said anything, and that's something that will be revealed through the CVR, the cockpit voice recorder. And they'll have the cockpit voice recorder records everything from when the plane is sitting there and the passengers are getting on board. It records everything from there, for an entire flight. So if there was a third person, unless that person was perfectly quiet the whole time, they'll know if a third person was in the cockpit. I'm guessing not. It's very scary. And then once again, I will tell all of you, I don't want any of this to scare you. You have to understand how rare this is. But we are not yet to a point where planes fly themselves. And dare I say, even if we get to that point technologically sometime, there are still going to be crashes. Like Bender said in The Breakfast Club, the world is imperfect. What's he say? Screws are falling out all the time. The world is an imperfect place. It's just the way it is. But unfortunately, this is really going back to when I first talked about this a couple weeks ago. This is exactly what I feared, that these engines were turned off on purpose. Not sent, like I said, it's hard to find the right words. It can be on purpose, but not be homicidal or suicidal. Like I said, the guy might have just been hallucinating, suddenly just lost his mind. Could be. But this was not a mechanical error. This was caused by human playing with buttons he should not have been touching. The only time those buttons should ever be touched is when the plane is parked at the gate. That's it. So I will. I know some of you are into this as well. You'll be keeping tabs on this to see what's going on. I certainly will be keeping an eye on all of this. As you can imagine, all of the airplane YouTube channels have featured this, and I've watched a few of them. In fact, I even posted a link to one of them in the discussion group on Facebook. There are a lot of bad airplane channels out there too. So be very careful what you're watching out there. I certainly would recommend the Blanco Lirio channel as being number one. And in fact, I probably, when it comes to stuff like this, I wouldn't go anywhere else except for there. So there you go. This is bad. Like I said, nothing good about this. This is one of those situations where you're actually hoping that it was a mechanical failure, that it was something, bad maintenance or something like that. Nope, not at all. One of those pilots did something. All right, let's move on to this. Let's talk about this Dallas pond mystery. Remember some weeks ago, there was a big story out of Dallas. Somehow they found all of these cars in a lake, in a pond, in a park. Like over 10 vehicles all in this pond, and they were the process, at least at the time, of pulling all of them out and identifying, well, whose car is this, whose car is that, are there license plates on them, can we get the VINs, what's going on here. And you also remember when I talked about it, I'm guessing this is a month ago now, that they kind of combined this with missing persons cases. That could it be that these cars are linked to missing persons cases, as has been shown over the last, almost 10 years with Chaos Divers and Adventures to Purpose, many others that have gone into rivers, gone into lakes, gone into ponds, gone all places, and found cars in bodies of water, and bodies end up being in them, and how these missing persons cases get solved. And I don't know how bold of a statement was, but I made a comment at the time that I read this story that I will be very, 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 very surprised if any of these cars are connected to a missing persons case. I'll be very, very surprised. And guess what? I was right. None of these cars are connected to any mercy, at least at this point, are not connected to any missing persons case, not in Dallas, not anywhere. What they were able to determine so far is that a lot of these cars were stolen, and they have cars going back to the 1980s. Cars from the 1980s, but also I think thefts from the 1980s. We're talking some of these cars could have been in there 40 years. But they are connected to actually just straight up car theft. Somebody going for a joyride, taking some car, driving it around until it almost runs out of gas, and then depositing it in this pond. Or they were vehicles that were stolen that were then used for crimes. So somebody's car gets stolen, the car, it's a car theft, but it's not a joyride type of thing. It's, all right, this car gets stolen, then it's driven to a bank, the bank gets held up, and they take off in the car. Of course, they might have a video of the car or something, and they've been able to determine that all of these cars are into one of those two categories: car theft or cars used in some other crime. No, how is it? Why is it that I could tell that just from reading that article where locally they're thinking these could be connected to missing persons cases. The odds, so let's just put it this way. If even what we would be thinking would be, first of all, we have to understand that cars going missing with people is very, very rare. We're doing the stats on this in Unfound right now. I think the stat is going to end up being about 5%. Of all of the unfound disappearances, 370 of them now, only 5% of them have been ones in which a person in the car went missing and the car was still missing a year later. Lots of disappearances where cars are connected to the disappearance, but we're talking about going missing like Esther Westenbarger or Donald Irwin. That's what I'm talking about. Only 5%. That's it. So to think that there were a bunch of disappearances that involving people and cars, and they all end up in cars in that pond is statistically very, 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 very unlikely. It's like Powerball numbers. Because there's just not that many cases out there for that to even happen. But then for all of them to end up in the same pond, very, 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 very unlikely. So then I started thinking, well, what are the odds that just one of these cars is connected to a missing persons case? And then I have to start thinking, well, what are the odds that there are all these other people doing joyrides and crimes and stealing cards? They put them in a pond. And then some murderer comes along, carjacks somebody, kills the person, steals the car, and leaves the person in the car and puts it in the same pond where all of these other cars that were used for other crimes totally connected, where nobody died, and it's people just joyriding around. Once again, in my mind, that sounds also very, 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 very unlikely. That the odds that a killer would happen to put a car into the same pond with all these other cars. You may be saying, well, maybe somebody did this. I'm not inclined to think that a person who would kill somebody and get rid of the person in the car would put it in the same pond where all of these other cars are, because the more cars you put in there, the more likely they're going to get found. As we know now, they were all found. Remember, killers like to get away with their crimes. That doesn't mean they're perfect. That doesn't mean they plan them all out or anything else. But it is in their mind, what do I got to do to get away with this? And when you have lakes and rivers and ponds all over Texas and the Dallas area, if you've been going around stealing cars just for the joy of it and dumping them in that pond, and then you actually kill somebody in the process of doing it, and that seems like a bad choice to put that car with all those other cars if you want to get away with it. And that's why I determined that none of these cars are going to be connected to disappearance. Very sad. I'm not happy about it. I'm certainly happy when, I guess it's bittersweet, but when cars are found, like with Karen Shepard's, like was covered in the consult a month ago, and others. Happy with her, Esther Westenbarger. Not happy that she's dead, but I'm happy that it's resolved. I'm happy her family doesn't have to live every day wondering what the hell happened to Esther. Same way with Donald Irwin. It's bittersweet. So there is a part of me that emotionally would hope that some of these cars are connected to disappearances, because that's, one step closer to finding out what happened. Now, it may not be that a body's inside one of these cars, but still, it's better than nothing. I mean, we could look at like Eric Frank's. His car was eventually found, and it even lent more to the idea that, he was surely murdered. Whereas I think everybody, including myself, was thinking Eric Franks' car was in a pond somewhere or a river, had been parted out or crushed or anything else. Nope. It was still running. I mean, the most shocking thing I think ever in Unfound's history, I think even more shocking than discovering that Mary Jane Van Gilder pulled off living a new life for 45 years. That's my assessment. You may have something, think something different. So I want these things to happen, but I take great pride in trying to be right. I think by now you know that I don't think with my emotions. I like being right. I think that's why I'm so good at trivia. I like being right. And I think this is why I take this analysis so much more seriously than anybody that's come along looking at these disappearances. I want to be right. I'll be honest. I want to be able to brag and say, I predicted it. I knew it, because when you can do that, that shows that you're learning something. And when you're learning something, that means something can be learned, not just by me, all of you, everybody else. And if we are learning about these things, that means more of them are going to be solved. I don't know how much more. Is it 10% more? Is it 25% more? Probably not 100% more, but it's a certain percentage. But you have to be able to look at these stories and be able to predict them accurately. That is how you show whether you know something or not. This is why, the way I look at it, all these people out there making all these theories about whatever case out there, how many have they predicted that are right? I like saying, I think this is what happened in that disappearance and ends up proven right. How many of those people do that? Not very many. I do. And I'm like 90% accurate. I'm not here to brag. I wish everybody were like me. So getting back to this Dallas Pond, story, that's why I can do that. I don't know if there were any YouTube channels or podcasts that even covered this story, but I haven't seen any. But I know I've seen other stories over the years where kind of the same thing has happened. A bunch of cars are found somewhere, a bunch of this, a bunch of that. And I'm like, this isn't going to go anywhere. Everybody else gets excited about it. Oh, I'm saying it's not going to happen. Here's why. So I'm sad about it, but this is what we have to go through, to learn these things. And I didn't even need to look at, I didn't even have to look at NamUs. I didn't have to look at the Charlie Project to even see what disappearances were in the Dallas area over the last 40 years and were there any cars missing or anything else. I could just read the story and say, it's not going to happen for the reasons that I just explained. And you can go back and just to show that I'm not doing revisionist history, you can go back and figure out, was it a month ago? Was it 6 weeks ago when I first talked about this? You can hear my prediction back then that ended up being right. I don't like being right, but I like being right, if you know what I mean. So that's going nowhere. Although I do understand that, of course, there are other divers out there making discoveries other places. But for this particular Dallas Pond story, not connected to any missing persons, no bodies in any of the cars. It all seems to me like low-level felony crimes these cars were connected to. All right. Speaking of predictions, I saw this story. I saw a posting about this on Facebook the last couple days, and I want to like I said, I might make this a weekly thing. Maybe I should have done this years ago, where I just pick out, and I do this kind of. I mean, I've done this with Jennifer Cassie. I've done this with the Springfield 3. I have some others, where I pick out a disappearance that has not been featured on Unfound yet and just offer some comments. Usually on old disappearances, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. This one's, though, is a fairly new one. This is Ryan Larsen. I know maybe some of you know about this. D, I know you're in the crowd. I know that these child disappearances always catch your eye. And also maybe I think that Ryan Larsen was at least partially autistic or something. Maybe I know that also always catches your attention, D. I just want to do some analysis for all of you on this particular disappearance. I'm just going to read part of the what was written at the Charlie Project, and we're going to try to break this one down. Ryan was last seen in La Vista, Nebraska. He is still missing. This is still unsolved, just so you know, D. Ryan Larsen. Ryan was last seen in La Vista, Nebraska on May 17th, 2021. He was a sixth grader at La Vista West Elementary School. After becoming frustrated with a math problem, Ryan went to another room to be by himself and calm down. An adult was supposed to be supervising him, but one supervisor had to leave the room and the replacement was late. During the time he was not supervised, between 11:55 a.m. and 12:05 p.m., Ryan left the school campus. At 12:27, so roughly 20 minutes after he was at the school notified his mother that he was missing. At 12:29 p.m., the school called 911, and the police arrived 5 minutes later to begin the search. So roughly 30 minutes at the least. There were police already on the grounds of this school looking for him. So fairly quickly. I mean, we only could wish that so many disappearances, they started searching so fast. A neighbor saw Ryan at 1:45 p.m., so approximately an hour and 45 minutes after he was at the school, at the Southfield Apartments, about 2 blocks from his school on 84th Street and Harrison Street. I'm going to come back to that. He was holding his umbrella at the time. Ryan lived at that apartment complex with his mother and one older sister. But he couldn't have gone inside his apartment after leaving school because he didn't have the key. He was never seen again. More than 6 weeks later, that same umbrella that Ryan had was found near a dumpster behind that apartment complex where he lived. This is the same place he was last seen on the day of his disappearance. Now, you should know, in addition, his mother, over the last, this is a disappearance that's just over 4 years, has tried to sue everybody, as you might imagine. The school, the apartment complex, everybody. I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, I feel horrible for her. But from what I've read, she's lost at every turn. She's, trying to sue the school because why was my son left unsupervised, on and on and on. It's gone nowhere. She spent a lot of time. I'm not saying I'm not on her side. I'm not saying I'm on her side. I'm just telling you that she's tried to do this and has not been successful. So how are we supposed, the D on the end, to break this disappearance down and trying to figure out what statistically is most likely? Instead of just theorizing, we can throw around theories for days. But statistically, what is most likely was the outcome? Why is Ryan still missing over 4 years later? Statistically, I would say that him getting randomly picked up by someone doesn't seem very likely. Is it possible? Yes, it is. Any child who's walking around, he's a sixth grader, so 11, 12, could be picked up, could be lured. Some guy could have pulled up saying, "Hey, your mother's looking for you. She just saw her, I'll take you to her." Certainly possible. But given that surely nobody could have known that Ryan was out on the street that day, it seems unlikely. Possible, yes. But I don't know if it's statistically the best choice. Now, what catches my eye about this, maybe does yours too, if all these times are correct, and of course Megan runs a nice site over there, so I'm going to say that these are probably correct. That he left, what catches my eye is that they determined that he left the school. Let's just keep this easy. That he left the school at noon. It says between 11:55 and 12:05. Let's just make the average of that noon. What's interesting to me is that a neighbor saw Ryan at the Southfield Apartments at 1:45 p.m. So that's almost 2 hours later, even though the Southfield Apartments were only 2 blocks from the school. Now, 2 blocks, I realize that blocks mean different things. A block in New York City is probably different than a block in La Vista, Nebraska. So let's just say that it's a half a mile. Is that reasonable for a couple blocks? I think it is. The average adult will walk a half a mile in about, let me think about that. I usually say 3 miles an hour. I'll break that down. So in about 10 minutes, the average adult can walk about a half a mile. If you don't know how I figure that out, I usually think of the average human walks, if they're sober, of good mind and average conditions in flat ground, just keep it simple, about 3 miles an hour. If you're walking home from somewhere, say you dropped your car off at the garage and it's a mile away and you say, I'll just walk home. If you're just that kind of walk, 3 miles an hour. So that breaks down to 10 minutes for a half mile for an adult. Now, for a child, is it going to be slower? Of course, but not that much slower. So right away, I'm wondering why, if he really did leave the school at noon, but he wasn't seen at his apartment complex where he lives, he would surely know where that is. And it's only 2 blocks from the school, but it took him an hour and 45 minutes to get there. Was he walking around? Was he maybe hiding in the school? Because what I didn't include there is that Ryan loved to play hide and go seek. And I think this is something that certainly needs to be contemplated in this disappearance. When you hear something like that, I mean, a lot of kids like to play hide and go seek, but it does seem in reading about him that he really, really, really liked to play it. And he really took pride in being able to hide from humans from adults, I should say. So I start thinking, well, where was he for those hour and 45 minutes between him being at the school and then being seen at his apartment? Maybe we might be open to the idea, is the time wrong? That's always possible with witnesses. Maybe it wasn't 1:45, maybe it was 12:45, which might make, of course, a closer to being more logical and probably more statistically true, but this is all we have. It says an hour and 40. It says 1:45 p.m. So it's an hour and 45 minutes after he would have been at the school. Where was he? Why is it that there was only one sighting of him? Was he hiding the whole way home? Did he plan to go home? And was he running from bush to bush to bush the whole way home and nobody saw him? That seems unlikely as well. So I got to tell you, I'm inclined to think that if this is all true, my guess is that after he was left in that room by himself, he went to go hide in the school somewhere. And when no adults came to find him, that's when he decided to go home. So then what happened when he got home? I mean, should we be suspicious of the neighbor? And the neighbor admits seeing him. Could this neighbor have done something to Ryan? I guess. I don't know who this neighbor is. I don't know the person's name. I don't know any more about this than any of you do. Could this neighbor, of course, be wanting the police and Ryan's family to think a certain thing because this neighbor did something to Ryan? I guess. But what flies in the face of that, in my opinion, is that Ryan's umbrella was found near the dumpster at the Southfield apartment 6 weeks later. Now, that is confusing. Did nobody notice that? If this neighbor saw Ryan at the Southfield apartment, surely that neighbor found out within a few days that Ryan was missing and would have said, well, I saw him that day. I think it was around 1:45. And so would that not have focused the search on the Southfield apartments? And would that search not have found that umbrella a lot sooner than 6 weeks later? You'd think. But that's not what happened because, like it says, more than 6 weeks later, his umbrella was found near a dumpster behind the Southfield apartments. This is the same apartment complex where he was last seen on the day of his disappearance. And I remind you, he couldn't get into his apartment because he didn't have a key. So without talking to his family, I would have to know way more about this umbrella. Did it rain that day? Did he always carry the umbrella? Would need to know a lot more of his habits regarding that umbrella. And certainly I'd have to ask them, well, I don't live there. What do you think about the umbrella? Are you inclined to believe that it wasn't there and then all of a sudden it suddenly popped out of nowhere? This is kind of like from this past Friday, Tanya Sadecki's purse. She goes missing. Then a month later, lo and behold, there's her purse on the sidewalk. And really, I got to tell you, I think that that's what went on here. I'm inclined to think that Ryan did go home, couldn't get in, and might have put his umbrella somewhere. He goes missing. Somebody else comes along, finds the umbrella. Oh, this nice umbrella. Look at this. And then that person finds out that Ryan's missing. That person finds out that Ryan went missing with an umbrella, and the person puts it all together and says, oops, I picked up Ryan Larsen's umbrella, and now I'm going to have to turn it in, and everybody's going to be suspicious of me. Nope. So in the middle of the night, this person who picked up Ryan's umbrella went and put it by the dumpster 6 weeks later. I'm fairly sure that's what happened. Fairly sure. No facts to support that. But so then what happened to Ryan Larsen? Well, my fear, and I don't mean to be really, really morbid about this, but I have to believe if somebody innocently picked that umbrella up and then found out, oh my goodness, this is Ryan Larsen's and everybody's looking for him and I have his umbrella, man, that looks bad. I'm inclined to think that this person might return the umbrella to the spot where he or she found it in the middle of the night. Wiped it down, no fingerprints. Whew, got to bring this back. 3 a.m, dump it there, go back. Maybe it's somebody who lives in that same apartment complex. I don't know. But if that's true, if it's true that this person, this kind of what I'm having in my head here is that the umbrella was found near a dumpster, I don't like the sound of that at all. Because I then start thinking, of course, this is just 4 years ago. When was garbage collection for this apartment complex? And could Ryan Larsen have been in that bin? I'm not saying this is an original idea. I don't even know if any podcasts have covered his disappearance. Like I said, I found out about it, just randomly through Facebook. Something appeared on my feed. And I thought, oh, yeah, I've heard of this disappearance. Let's see what it says. And so I have other podcasts covered his disappearance. I don't know what kind of additional information is out there. And I'm not saying necessarily that what I'm saying here is original. But I think on the other hand, it kind of helps that I don't know what anybody else has said. So my brain's not being tainted subconsciously with other people's opinions. I'd want to know, whatever day of the week this was that this happened, I would want to know, did the garbage collection happen that day? Did it happen the next day? And you can see where I'm going with this. Being that he was hiding, being that he seemingly tried to go home. He couldn't get into his apartment, so he went and hid in the bin, and the garbage truck came along. I hope not. Of course, I hope that Ryan Larsen is alive out there somewhere. But you put together the kind of time frame we're talking about here. If we're to believe this witness, the umbrella is found near the dumpster. Seemingly, it just appears out of nowhere. Because I have to, I guess what I'm also saying is if he got abducted, there's no way that somebody is bringing that umbrella back to that apartment complex and putting it there. That did not happen. If somebody abducted him from his apartment complex, let's just say he's sitting out on the front porch waiting for his mother to come home, and somebody just happens to come along and take him. Is the abductor really going to allow him to take his umbrella along? Probably not, because an umbrella could be used as a weapon. Ryan could have used it as a weapon to get away. So I would doubt that, somebody would abduct him and then bring it back 6 weeks later. Just as we would all of you would guess by now, what's the best thing to do? Not leave anything anywhere. Going back to the scene of crime, you could risk getting caught and all sorts of things if you actually did something. Whereas somebody who knows he or she did not do something and just kind of innocently got caught up in this, they'd feel like doing the right thing, but they don't want to so much do the right thing to start getting questioned because they're going to, the questioning, who knows? They might just talk themselves into a murder charge or something when they really didn't do anything because police are so gung-ho about, trying to get it done in cases like this. And we know that a lot of people get unfairly treated and unfairly suspected. I'd also want to know about the weather. And this kind of goes back to point number one. If this day that if we're to believe this neighbor, that he walked home and he was seen in the area, did he have the umbrella because it was supposed to rain that day? Did it rain that day? I didn't go back. It's easy enough to do, like with Weather Underground or somewhere. You can find out what the weather was in La Vista, Nebraska that day. So I'd want to know about that. Here's a kid. He's outside. Maybe it's starting to rain. He has an umbrella. He's hiding because he's not supposed to be there, and he's embarrassed about what happened at school and everything else put together. And like I said, he had autism. I think they might have even said he was, what did this say? Let me just look this up very quickly. What did this exactly say here? As a way to explain to what degree, if you want to put it that way. Oh my goodness, I got to go back here. No, not seeing it. All right, hold on a second. Ryan Larsen, I know I've heard about this disappearance before. There he is. It says, due to his autism, Ryan had a history of running away and hiding. The police referred to him as the king of hide and seek. Due to his habit of running, he had been enrolled in Project Lifesaver, which equips vulnerable people with a GPS tracking bracelet so they can be found if they go missing. However, Ryan repeatedly cut off the tracker, and eventually his mother stopped making him wear it. In spite of his history, Ryan has never gone missing this long before. He would usually be located nearby a short time after running away. His family describes him as a happy boy, enjoyed helping others, such as the school janitor. It says an adult was supposed to be supervising him, and one supervisor had to leave the room, and the replacement was late, and that's when Ryan slipped out of there. Let me see here. I did read in here somewhere, or I thought somewhere. It doesn't say. But he, like I said, he had a history of hiding. And I guess that he was such a good hider that the police even knew about him. So I have to start to wonder, is this one more time that he was playing this game, and this is the game that cost him? He picked the wrong place to hide. Now, being autistic, would he have, once again, I realize there's different levels of it. Would he have understood that getting in a garbage bin is dangerous? And how would he have acted if he was in there and he heard a truck pulling up? Would he have revealed himself? I don't know. I think we could say if it was like a child without autism, maybe it's just really kids just playing hide and go seek in the neighborhood, and one of them decides to hide in a garbage bin and they hear a truck pulling up. I'm guessing if it's just a game like that the kid would like, hey, wait, hold on a gosh darn second. But a kid with autism who knows that he left school and he was upset at what happened at school, it sounds to me like this would be less likely that a kid of that type would reveal himself under circumstances of hearing a truck. He might think, oh no, the adults are looking for me and I'm not coming out of my place, I think. So like I said, I don't know if this is an original idea. I don't know if garbage collection has ever been checked. But I know it's pretty morbid and ugly to think about a kid being in there and the thing getting thrown into the back, and we know what happens back there. But unfortunately, we know of like homeless people who have been killed that way. I think that must happen at least once a year all over the United States and cities. Homeless person falls asleep in a garbage bin. Before they know it, they're in the back of the truck and, everything is getting compacted. I just can't even think about it. And I hope that's not what happened with Ryan. I hope he's still alive somewhere. I just don't think it's very likely. Jennifer and Chime. Hi, late but still here. Good to see you, Jennifer. How about you and Cranky99? Greetings, Ed and all. What's going on? Getting in here with only 20 minutes to go. That's okay, Cranky. You can do the replay, I guess. And check out the replay. So that's Ryan Larsen. I would state my insight is statistically, I think that he was in a garbage bin and got taken away. Could he have been abducted? Yeah. I don't know how statistically probable that is. Could he have gone and hid somewhere else and still hasn't been found yet? Kind of like look at Daniel Villarreal. Look how long he was in that pool house. Years before he was found. Could that be the same way with Ryan? Sure. So he's wasn't in a garbage bin. Maybe somewhere around there he found somewhere else and he's been stuck there all that time. And of course, we know what happened in Texas with, I forget the guy's name, Caleb Davis was his name. Remember the guy that ordered food at like 1:30 in the morning and then he wasn't there when the food was delivered? And they eventually found him in that sewer system underneath the manhole. Maybe this is also what we could be talking about for Ryan Larsen. In the neighborhood, did he find an open manhole? Would he have been strong enough to move one of those because he wanted to hide and move it back? My guess also, if he was a supreme hide and go seek, he knows what worked before and what didn't work before. If he wanted to win this time, to take it even one step further. And I might be interested to know where he's been. If this were a disappearance that were to be featured, and I wouldn't mind talking to his mother. I'm guessing she'd want to talk a lot about how she's getting screwed over by the legal system. But I would certainly ask her where did he hide in the past? Where did he get found in the past? How did he get found? Those would all be very relevant questions and really, really, really trying to narrow this all down. Cranky, they're not letting me wear earbuds at work anymore. Why not, Cranky? What did you do? Did you get in trouble? Is that what happened? And I'm wondering what work that you were doing that you were wearing ears at work. What else do I have here? I, of course, did not do the Tanya Sadecki poll yet. The question that I asked in the discussion group was, who put Tanya's purse where it was eventually found? I'm hoping all of you have listened to the episode. You know that weeks after she went missing, her purse, or a purse with her stuff in it, was found a couple miles away from where she lived, just right there in the sidewalk. A woman walking her child to the school or to the bus stop was just sitting there, and it looked like it had just been put there not long before that. Did Tanya put it there? Did Jeff put it there? Did the drug dealer put it there? Did somebody else put it there? And overwhelmingly in the discussion group, the decision was that someone else put the purse there. Not Jeff, not the drug dealer, but someone else, just a very vague someone else. Me, I think the same thing as when I was talking about Ryan Larsen. What I'm inclined to think with Tanya Sadecki is kind of like just what I said with Ryan Larsen, in that somebody not connected to Tanya's disappearance, if there is anybody connected to her disappearance, somebody came across her purse somewhere within it with her stuff in it. Maybe at the time when they found the purse, did not realize she was missing, then saw the news, was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to get caught with this. I'm just going to drop it here so somebody else can find it. And in the think tank, kind of the same thing. Pretty much, not Sonya did not put it there. Jeff did not put it there. This drug dealer that we discussed did not put it there. Somebody else put it there. Now, might have been some differing opinions on who that could be and why it was done. But overwhelmingly, the consensus in the think tank, once again, patreon.com/Unfound podcast, if you'd like to be a member of the think tank. The consensus was that somebody who didn't even know Tanya at all put the purse there. Tough one. As I stated in the summation for Tanya's, it has elements of a variety of possible theories. Certainly could believe Jeff did something to her. The man in a woman's life is always a good choice. Very could be that this drug dealer did something to her or covered something up if she OD'd or something. Being that she was talking about suicide, well, if she's going to talk about it, then we have to consider it. And then maybe she just ran off and tried to make it on her own and it didn't work out. She didn't necessarily commit suicide, but she did die. Because, the tough part, of course, the way Tanya lived her life, there's no way she could have stayed out of trouble all this time. No way. So Tanya Sadecki really took me back. I know once in a while we've covered some disappearances from where I grew up in Pennsylvania. Avonmore, New Ken, even going over to like the Ross Township area. So that kind of took me back. But of all those areas, this area, Brackenridge, Tarentum, New Toronto Heights, I hung out more there than any of those other places. Did a lot of cruising around, playing music, see who we might run into, new people from down that area. And, but in my insight is the area has gotten a lot rougher than it was 35 years ago. Cranky says, against company policy, we run machines that make airplane parts. Oh, my goodness. Well, that's impressive, Cranky. Would be curious to know the statistics on people going missing and having a plan to commit suicide versus those who do not have a plan. Yeah. Yeah, Cranky. The tough part about that is that off the top of my head, we have 2 disappearances that have been resolved in Unfound's history that I think we know are suicides. That would be Donald Irwin and, oh my goodness, I hate when I do this. And Devin Bond. Devin Bond, young man, slipped out, took his family's gun, killed himself. His remains were eventually found. It took a couple years. And then Donald Irwin, going through a lot of health issues. I don't think his relationship was going that well. A lot of things going on with him. And he went and drove his car almost assuredly on purpose. And of course, his car was eventually found. His remains were eventually found in that pond. Those are the 2 that we can look at and say were planned suicides. Whereas we have somebody like Crystal Morrison who died after walking off. I'm not convinced she wanted to die. Maybe she did. There's nothing that I see that makes me think that, but I didn't know her. Likewise, like Esther Westenbarger. Even though, of course, she did go into that pond in her car, I don't think anybody thinks that she committed suicide. I think that was an accident. It could have been because she was drinking and driving or fell asleep at the wheel or driving too fast or whatever else. But it wasn't suicide. So when you start thinking curious statistics on people going missing and having a plan to commit suicide versus those who do not have a plan, Crystal Morrison died. I don't think anybody now thinks there was foul play. I don't think she had a plan to walk off. I think that she had heat stroke and everything else, and the elements got to her. And that's certainly different than from what Devin Bond did. But they both ended up dead. So, and you also have to remember, Cranky, that we have featured some disappearances where the guy, I think it's all men, ended up being alive. Of course, we know that Mary Jane Van Gilder was alive for 45 years. Of course, by the time we got to it, she was already dead, but she lived for 45 years after. So was that a plan? Certainly in her mind, yeah, it was a plan. Was Brandon Roberts, who ended up being alive, a plan to leave his life or whatever? Not my impression. I think he just fell out of communication with his family. Patrick Reed, did he plan? Yeah, he did. I think that he was just fed up with the people around him. He ended up moving in with this woman and didn't tell anybody. So did he plan not to talk to all those people? Yes, he did. So, no. Of course, we have the Glasgow guy, bad guy, probably one of the worst guys that we've featured on the podcast. Did he plan to go out of contact so he wouldn't have to pay child support and everything? Yes. So, but for the people who died, like I said, with Crystal Morrison, I don't think she planned to die. Did Robbie Hurt plan to die? Well, he's a drug addict, and I would not say that he planned it. I don't think it was suicide, but he was in a high risk category to kill himself, even if it was only accidentally. So I know I'm like really drawing fine lines here, but I think it all matters. I think it matters. We've had people who have planned to leave their lives and successfully did so and ended up being alive. And then we've had people who plan to leave their lives and commit suicide, and we have some of those too. So how much? We got 5 more minutes. One more thing before I get to this Friday's episode. I'm very happy to say that it seems finally that the Coast Guard is going to act on the FOIA that Assistant Eric sent to them. He got a letter back saying that they are going to look at our request within the next 20 to 30 days. And this has to do with primarily the disappearances of Teresa Hickman and Angela Westbury, who went missing together after getting on a boat over there in the Jacksonville area, never to be seen again in 1984. But this is going to be combined with other disappearances that have happened over there, seemingly out in the water, including a disappearance that has already been featured on Unfound, Tony Schwark. And I'm hoping that this will end up being a series, a series where, we do 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes. Me talking to Eric, me talking to some of these families, me talking to the one investigator from the Coast Guard. I'm hoping that's going to happen. But we're already here in July, so I don't know if it's going to happen this year. We'll just have to see. And of course, it will also depend on how much they want to give us from the FOIAs. Now, very fortunately, Eric has already collected a lot of information, specifically on Teresa's and Angela's disappearances. That is stuff that is not out there anywhere. Stuff that has really just blown me away. But there are a couple other disappearances that we want to include, and that's why we did these FOIAs, to see how many disappearances we can collect of this type. So people who seemingly went out on boats along the Atlantic coast of Florida during the 1980s and went missing. You find out there are quite a few people. And if I can speak for the Coast Guard just for a moment, the feeling that I get is that they believe that almost all of these disappearances are drug smuggling connected. So we'll just have to see. Still working on it. I know I haven't talked about it for a while, but seemingly maybe by the middle of August, hopefully I'll have a huge stack of paperwork regarding all of this to go through with Eric. Just like I got that huge stack when we did the FOIA for Jennifer Perry's disappearance. All right. One more thing, the surprise episode. I hope you enjoyed it regarding Jason Blair. Part 2 will be coming out sometime soon. This Friday, I think it's going to happen. I'm doing the interview tomorrow morning. Going to be doing the disappearance of Anthony Reyes, Reyes. It's a very, very, very new disappearance. He went missing on June 28th of 2024, so just over a year ago, from Bayville, New Jersey. And I've spoken with his mother, Barbara, already once. Anthony had some mental health issues, bipolar issues, depression issues. And not long before he went missing, he thought people were after him. And Barbara actually saw him that day. He was at the house that he lived at with the woman in his life. Right at this point, I'm unclear. Was it his wife, his girlfriend? Not clear, but they had some kids together. And Anthony was known to go for walks. That was not unusual. He'd go for walks in the evening and come back. And Barb saw him. She was over at the house. She left. She came back. He wasn't there. The woman in his life said, yeah, he went off for a walk. He hasn't come back yet. And Anthony was never seen again. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be interviewing her Barbara tomorrow morning. Like I said, hope it happens. I think it's going to. And I also have an interview lined up for next week as well. So I'm really excited about that one as well. But anything else, I think that's it. And it is 11 o'clock. Look at that. What timing. That's all I have for you tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. We did the long time missing boy, Ryan Larsen. Flight 171 update, did that. We did the Dallas Pawn mystery, so I got the headliner stuff done. Good for me. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you were enthralled. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And as I told at the beginning of these 2 hours about me keeping my head on a swivel, I want all of you to keep your heads on swivels. Do not be victims. Be aware of your surroundings. It pays to be cynical these days. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. And I will see you again next Monday. And of course, you'll hear me this Friday. Good night.